Yeah. And if you want, you can be on your video, or don't need to, it's fine. And I'm in a quiz mode, so I hope we'll get chatty on the chat here. Yeah. Is the recording going on? All right. So welcome to Weekly Wednesday, and I'm Sudha Jamthe, and we will be getting started in a minute. Just wanted to say thank you to Sneha for hosting this every week, and I am going to do it this week because she let me do it, and I'm back. And I had a question for you. I don't know in the invite whether you guys end up reading the topics and the speakers and the stuff. So last week's speakers recording is back on Career Pivot from where you came on Driverless World School. I'm just going to go back because I see at least one new face here. Can I share my screen? So there's Neha. She's our regular host. And this is our Weekly Wednesday series, and you get to meet new people, hang around with other regular people, business professionals, innovators who love AI, autonomous vehicles, and just doing fun stuff in their jobs or creating new businesses. So this is the outlook. This is the first week of January when I did the Outlook 2021. And this is when Anna Chubinitse spoke about AI ethics and measuring business risk. Rest of it is out here in curriculum. Sometimes you won't find it here because I've not got the speaker's permission, or it needed a lot more editing hours than I could set aside. Okay, so today I promised you that we are going to talk about what is your role as a business person when you're building AI. So let's start with this. Okay, so I found this, instead of just me making up my usual list, I just thought I will go out and find published versions of AI applications. Okay. Before that, I don't know if you have seen my newsletter because I shared an exciting picture of the Apple self-driving car that I was lucky to see. I'm going to share again. So for those of you who've been on my newsletter, I had stopped it during the 2020 crazy year. So I've resumed it back. It's called curiousfuturist.substack.com. And so this is my second issue. And here we are. That's me. I was not dressed to go take any picture or selfie of any kind. It was a rainy day. This was our inauguration day in US on the 20th of Jan. And guess what I saw? I quickly took a picture. And this is the Apple self-driving car. This was in Cupertino. And let me go in so you will see the larger view of it. And it is resuming driving. We are all training data for the self-driving car. And so it must be missing us when we are not driving, or there's not enough traffic. So it was there. I was tempted to go back to chase my cars, but I restrained myself and just got you this picture. So, but there's hope. I feel happy. I feel really happy that we are back. And then this is a talk I gave at IoT Slam in December. And they have this, I've put this up at IoT Practitioner, that's their site. And this is about computer vision. Specifically, I focus on different kind of technologies that is needed underlying computer vision and applications that it goes past the car. So this is like NASA bringing technology to everything else. So the self-driving car technology is not just limited to self-driving car. Previously, we've spoken about how self-driving car, autonomous vehicle technology, and the whole business model is not limited to the mobility and bringing robotaxis, but to a lot of other industries. So in this one, I'm actually talking about object recognition and computer vision technologies and how it applies to Industry 4.0. So hopefully you like it. Okay. And give me feedback. I want to know, since I've resumed my newsletter, whether, I just did this once in the beginning of the year and once again last night. So I want to see how frequently do you want to see it, because now I'm back in a writing mode and I want to, give you more, and we can set a consistent schedule, or I can go back to writing a lot more. So give me feedback, but I want to know what works for you, what's useful for you. Okay, so to today's topic, when you're bringing AI to your company, what is your role as a business person? So just give me a general thinking. If you're working on AI and in your company, do you know what you would be doing? Do you know if you have a role? What would that look like? If you're a product manager, if you're a business development person, or you have this amazing title like Aisha to here, uh, which is about being a peace technologist. So what would that look like? What is your role when bringing AI to the companies, to where you work? Okay, that's what we're going to discuss. Okay, and you can chat your comment if you have or questions. Provide value, that's ambiguous enough. What does provide value means, Emmanuel? And just so you know, I had this discussion last night on Twitter about GDPR and recording during Zoom sessions, and I believe GDPR does not allow you to opt. It doesn't want you to just be forced to opt out. It wants you to opt in. So I'm recording here, and if you don't want it, you can get away. You can mute yourself. Your name is still going to show if you're putting it in picture mode. I just want you to be aware of it. And if you want to tell me offline, how, if you have any concerns about it, I'm happy to respect that. I won't be able to go sit and edit these videos later and stuff, because this is a whole community exercise. So it's like being in a public meetup for all purposes, but it's limited to our students here. So I'm trying to respect that much for security. Okay. Provide value. Okay, Jonathan is saying, I'm a service designer, CEO of a startup. Okay. So when you're bringing AI to your business, or if you're a startup and you're bringing this to a client business, what is your role? So the reason I'm asking is, I have this project called Capstone Lab, where some of you here I see are from that group. We got a real data, real business from a company, and then we started going through the whole cycle of taking the business problem and translating it into a problem statement that the data scientist can build it. And then that was the first phase, and the second phase was to actually look at the data. We've kind of gone to that, and now we are going to do the lab phase using no code AI to fit it. So I'd invited this speaker to class, who is a no code AI company co-founder, and I had this conversation saying, hey, my students are business people, product managers. People understand product managers, and then they assume there's an AI product management role, which is not fixed yet. There are variations of that role, like product management most of the time. But for everything else, they tend, even for product managers, they tend to assume, okay, they are not coding, they are not doing linear algebra, they are not data scientists. They start explaining machine learning in a certain basic way. And so we've done a lot of no code AI, where we say, okay, what is machine learning and how does this work? And we've done the basics. So I wanted to articulate what is your role when you're building an AI specifically, not just like you're going to represent the customer, adding value kind of thing. So let's see, I'm seeing some comments here. Richard says, finding ways to leverage data to increase business. That's a fantastic one, Richard. Thank you. To make enterprise more efficient, more focused on specific segments, growth, opportunity. Okay, so that's a great starting point, right? That is defining your business goal that you want to increase efficiency, you want to increase your growth, retention. That is the starting point of a business goal. So somebody in data science could say, hey, I'm building data science models, and that's what I'm doing. My models are going to increase growth, increase opportunity, increase retention, that kind of thing. So then what is the specific business? What should I turn to the business person and say, hey, can you do this for me? Help me out with this. What would that look like? Because I know many of you here are aspiring to go work in AI. Some of you are already working in AI. And some of you are working in the car space and working with data, which, and using AI in some form, bringing AI into the car. So I want to get into the specifics. So yes, there is a business problem, like Richard has listed, that you want to increase retention for the company, or you want to bring more business. You start with that, and that's the business goal. That's not just your goal as a business person. It's possible that you're responsible for it, or your CEO turns to you and say, hey, we need to grow our business, and I want we want to make sure that we have better retention of our customers. They're dropping off, so can we reduce churn or increase retention? That could be a higher level goal for the company. Now the data science person knows what they're doing because they're going to build a model. But just by having that high level business talk, they just can't run with it and go build a model. They need to do something more to get, they need a problem statement, and they need the data. So what is your role? And there's many of you here with different variations of business roles. So I just want to have that conversation. Jonathan is saying, most of my work is in understanding customer needs, then figuring out how we can deliver that profitably using AI where appropriate. Okay, that's very helpful, Jonathan. So you start understanding business needs. So is it fair to say that you spend the time to understand the customer need in a little bit more granular way, instead of, yes, let's reduce churn or increase retention? You break it down to something more specific that can be built in data science.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
As much detail as possible.
Thank you. So Emmanuel is saying, I want to use AI, find the most likely users, which will lead to increased revenue, value for the company. So he has data of potential customers who are interested in his product, and he wants to use AI to find the most likely users. So which set of users, so out of a list of users that he already has, he wants to find which set of users are more likely, who have a higher propensity to buy. So he wants to know which of these users are more likely to buy. So if you're going to send a mailing to them, or you're going to call them, engage them in some form and tell them about your product, you want to know who is going to likely buy. So if you have 1,000 people in your list, if you want to make calls, you want to call maybe 20 people, right? So you want the AI to kind of shortlist to say who has the propensity to buy. So that gets more specific. So that's a marketing use case. That's good. And instead of saying, I want to increase revenue, and the other thing is you're actually making a very strategic decision that you're going to take an existing list and then you're going to sell to that list. Okay. Then I'm seeing Aishatu saying something. As an AI solution architect, that is such a cool title. As an AI solution architect, I develop a strategic technical vision, just like the architect in the construction industry, creating a general blueprint of a future building. A person in this position must have a profound knowledge of the available use cases, so that's just the best solution according to the incoming requirements and existing environment. It's about knowing the data, define the business problem, and to know who is the customer segment. Again, I'm hearing knowing who is the customer segment. That's very interesting. So Aishatu is coming from a very different world because she is working for Peach Solutions as a solutions architect, which is different from a tech solution architect, because there are titles like that, right? Saying solutions architect. And you're saying, I like your analogy of, building industry, but you're basically saying, knowing the data, defining the business problem, to know who is the customer segment. So I want to capture that, because at least in multiple cases I've heard about, data, getting the data, owning the data, arranging to get the data, I would say, right? Sometimes the data might be owned by a certain specific department, or it might not be one data set. You might have data from multiple different teams, and you'll have to figure out what data is needed. And then I hear the same thing of customer segment. So I see three things in there. One is the data. Another is everybody is talking about the business problem. So is there a specific role that you have as a business person in defining the business problem? I had a hard time finding anything anywhere. Every possible material about data science, about AI, explains applications of AI. AI can do this, AI can do that, and this amazing use cases. It's very inspirational. And there are case studies like I have in my AIX book, which is very specific about how AI was used in specific industry, what was the business outcome. That is after you get it done. So all of you are talking about defining the business problem, getting the data to build the AI, and then Aisha too is talking about defining the specific problem statement. Okay, make sure. Oh, I missed Josh's comment. Let me see. I missed Jose's comment. Sorry, Jose. Thank you for that, Richard. Okay, so the goal is to automate time-consuming tasks in order to allow humans to dedicate to other high-value activities. Thank you, thank you. So again, so automation. So automation, specifically, reducing churn and improving retention, growing your business, growing to new segments. These are all applications of AI. Do you see, from what I'm hearing, since you're giving me examples of the applications or different use cases, does that mean you see it as your role, saying, hey, this is how we can bring AI to the company? In fact, I'm going to do a podcast on the topic of, bringing AI to a company. I was not thinking of that, specifically as the conversation here, but is it accurate to say you as a business person are actually going to use your creativity to say, hey, we can use AI in a certain way? And then you go look at the data we have, or go procure the data from different departments, or collect it and start arranging it, prepping it. Yes. Okay. Okay. So one of the things I'm finding is I've heard from data scientists that they get the business defined in a specific way as a problem statement. So they don't start off with, hey, let's go reduce churn. So if you say, because if you see, the artificial intelligence is really not intelligent. It's just doing things in large volume, right? It's predicting, fitting things in, in some kind of math. It's coming with some kind of wave pattern for a math problem, and so that it can actually make sense of data, right? So it needs more and more data. So when you get as specific as Emmanuel is saying, here is customer data. Within this set of customers, I want to know who is going to buy. Then it's very, very precise. Then you can actually say, okay, now I'm close to a problem statement. Even then, there could be 5 different ways of going about it, and I want to get to that, because the one thing I was blown away, I kind of intuitively knew this, but when I was watching the Capstone Lab teams work on real business problem with real data, one of the things I was blown away is you spend a lot of time in what is called PowerPoint state, where you're actually figuring out what is the problem, and how are we going to arrive at a problem statement. So all of you have given a lot of examples of high-level business problems. There could be 5 or 7 or more number of ways by which you can apply that strategy. So when you say, hey, I want to bring more value to the business, that's how we started. And then you want to make sure that you create growth for business. So this is my favorite quote. It's made what I keep talking about to anybody who says who wants to bring AI and grow their revenue pie. You must have heard this already many times, but when you say you want to bring more revenue to a business, you could do that by taking the existing customers, like Emmanuel is saying, and saying, hey, who has a higher propensity to buy? And I'm going to make them come back and buy my product again. So you're checking whether the customers are loyal. It's basically understanding your customer segments in a deeper level. You're using AI for that. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your existing list and you're going to farm it and get more business. So to do that, you might actually send them a mailing list. You might say, hey, you're my repeat customer. I'm going to send you give you a coupon or a special deal, or I'm going to give you a special price before I open it up to everybody. Or you might get on the phone and call them. It could be a larger customer, a different kind of sale that you call them in person. Or you can actually say, I'm going to take the existing set of customers and I'm going to increase the price of my product because I know they're loyal to me. I'm going to go to them first and sell it. Or you can understand that existing set of customers to see, understand their demographics very intimately, so that now you know you want to get another cohort of customers. So you get a segment of customers based on their behavior, and you can now go and get new set of customers who are similar to this profile. So if you find people from a certain country, certain title, certain education, or in a conference setting, people who have attended your previous conference and liked a certain content. So in my case, I keep talking about autonomous vehicles. So when I offer my courses, when I'm talking about AV, when I'm talking about AI, some of you are interested in AI, some of you are interested in AV. So if I'm saying, hey, I want to offer the AI masterclass again, I can go back, look at my list of students and say, oh, who is interested in AV? And maybe they will be interested in more AV courses. Or they can actually, or if I'm finding an opportunity for a job, then I can go through that list. So what I would do in a manual way, that's what the AI is going to do in a larger scale, but understanding the customer. But if you think about it, there's a lot more that goes in. So the point I was making is, once you make this high level business ask, I want to increase the business and growth, there are many directions you can go from a business strategy perspective. And the base need is to understand your customer intimately, and you can actually to farm the existing customer. You can increase the price, you can give them offerings, you can actually have different touch points where you can say, I'm doing this mailing or calling, and so the decision points of where you are um, going to how you're going to go about to increase this revenue could be different. So if you work in sales, you're going to get on the phone and you say, who should I call? If you work in marketing, you say, I'm going to send a campaign, who should get the coupon? If you are actually saying, hey, I want to go to a new market, you can say, I want to understand intimately who's my customer, what is their persona, what is their profile, and based on that, I'm going to get more of similar customers. So it comes down to the specifics of how you're going to act on the data, assuming the AI is giving you the answer. So I would say it's great you say, or you're bringing business value, you're defining the business problem. Let's get to the data part. Okay, next. But you're actually looking at growing your business and saying, hey, I'm going to grow this business in this way. Practically, this is my job as a marketing person, as a salesperson, as a business analyst who's going to go build this system next. And based on that, I am going to need the AI to get me this information. I'm going to assume that the AI is going to get this. I'm going to assume it's actionable, and this is the kind of action I'm going to take. So if you're building an AI project, and like Emmanuel is saying, he wants to call a set of people to go sell this product, it's going to build the AI model. You're not just going to say, drop everything and just go build the AI model. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to get this set of 50 customers, 20 customers, and I can call only 10 of them. And I need, maybe it's a B2B customer, maybe it needs more account management. So you might want to hire another person to go make these calls. And based on that, you're going to, scale your business. So there is going to be a cost in creating that extra content, that coupon campaign, in actually making those calls, even building those website and landing pages, providing new content, all kinds of things which you would normally do as a business person. So I find it very ambiguous to say you're a business person, and then we are stuck explaining, bringing value, understanding the customer, because in a real job, you're doing 10 different things, and 10 different things has different roles. Yes, Jonathan, thank you. So AI is advanced statistics. We focus on expanding to customers with similar needs, not so much about demographics, etc. Okay, so it's basically understanding the customers, and you're looking for customers with similar needs, which means you're taking these customers to tell you what works for you, who are your customers, what is your value prop look like. It's validated by the existing customers, and now you go to new customers. So there could be another case where I heard many of you are, at least a couple of you had startups. When you get started, you're going to start somewhere. You don't have data already. You have a product or a service or some offering. You don't have the existing data or existing set of customers. You have to start somewhere. So you're going to look for comparables. And that would be your starting point. And you might have public data set and say, okay, now based on this, I'm going to learn. For an existing customer set, the other thing you could do is you could actually, where it gets interesting when somebody is explaining what, like the nitty-gritties of how AI works. So when you say data science and what machine learning and deep learning, what they do, we hear about, hey, we can do supervised learning or unsupervised learning. Or we can actually do clustering, and we get a lot of different details. I can't do justice to covering that. In fact, I'm going to do this lab session with the capstone lab class and go through the English version of 5 classic classification algorithms. And so if that's of interest to the class, I can come back to that another time. But what I believe you need to know as a business person is you need to know what the AI is going to do in a more, when you think of talking to the data scientist, you're saying, yes, I want to bring business value. I want to increase revenues. I have an existing set of customer data. I want to understand that better. And I'm going to make marketing calls or email campaigns. I want to know which is it's called next best algorithm, where which is the best touch point. Do they want the mailing list? Do they want the call? What would work for them? Because the customer might have different, react to different mediums. And understanding the customer more intimately is too ambiguous, right? If you go say that I want to understand the customer intimately and give me an algorithm, the data scientist cannot do it. You say, I have this existing set of customers, help me understand this customer so I can get a similar set of customers and a new batch of customers to grow our business. That makes sense. Or you can say, even within this is where it gets to you understanding data science without doing the Python in there or the linear algebra, is you take the existing list. Now, do you want your data scientists to actually say, is this customer, Richard, to your point about adding retention for customers, do you want to say, is the customer going to churn? Yes or no for customer retention. So this customer is going to stay, this customer is going to stay, no, this customer is going to leave. That means you need to add a column which says the customer stayed, customer doesn't stay. So the data gets tricky, and you always hear about you need a lot of data and data is important, but the data that you're going to get has to have certain columns with certain information by which the AI can learn. So if you give clean data, of only what worked. So if you send, marketing is going to send mails to a lot of people. Some of them are going to open the mail, some of them are going to click, some of them are going to come and buy your product. If marketing says, I'm just going to give you this list of customers who have bought our product and they're happy with us, AI can't learn anything from that exercise. AI doesn't know what customers did not even open the link. Maybe the email was sent at an inconvenient time. Last night, I'll tell you this, I used to send my newsletters diligently for 1 year, exactly at 9 a.m. on Sundays. Now then I put that on hold, and then I started that back, and I wrote the first newsletter on a Tuesday, I think, the first issue. Then last night, I just got excited about the Apple self-driving car and decided to do another issue. And I said, hey, I'm going to make sure I write every night, and I'm going to contribute to the newsletter more. And it must have come at some godforsaken time for US time, because I was staying up late. And I was thinking, should I send it? No, maybe not. But then I said, it's afternoon in Europe. That's good for them. Let's do it. And so maybe somebody in Europe got this at a reasonable time, and middle of the day it worked for them, and they opened it. And when I send it at my usual 9 a.m. on Sunday, it might be evening in Europe, and some people might not open it, and I have people here from Ireland, from Nigeria, from Germany, from Mexico. So it gets knowing that the mail, the list, the email should come to you at a convenient time is associated with you opening. And so one of the things I find MailChimp does is MailChimp keeps sending emails to everybody and sees who opens it, who opens it, clicks, and what happens, right? They have this data that they give for each of us who send the newsletter out. And they, across the board, they must have done this with a lot of different customers. They put all of it together and done some kind of learning. So that learning of when you will open a mail, when somebody sends you a mail, is knowledge that MailChimp has. It's come from my data, from somebody else's data. I don't know that information. I don't have that knowledge. Instead, they tell me, hey, do you want to send it at 9 a.m. on Sundays? Or do you want to submit it to send, and we will send it at the right time that works for each person? So as a business person, I would say, yes, it makes sense to send it when it is, morning for them, or first thing in the morning they will see it. Or people tend to, open mails if it is, not on Monday mornings, but on Wednesday or something. And that might make sense. But they are going to say individually, Ida is going to open the mail at this time, and Emmanuel is going to open it at this time. And they have that knowledge across the entire population, and they are going to do that. So that is an algorithm they have built. And that goes back to looking at the data. If you're saying, I want to understand the customer and create growth, now they have this best time to send it. So the next best click, next time to send it, is this customer going to churn, yes or no? So what I'm leading into is, we spoke about, you as a business person bring business value, you focus on the customer, you all define multiple use cases of how you'll generate growth and revenues. And then we are looking at this one specific example that you already have a customer list, because a couple of you did that. There could be a new scenario where you don't have a list. I'm not talking about that. And I think in my AIX book, there is one case study from Patrick Schlavenberg about starting an e-commerce business in jewelry business, where they had zero customers because they were getting started, and how they generated a model and iterated the model to actually, create the business. But usually you'll have some starting point in an existing business. And then the examples we've been seeing is, now you can understand that customer. So I want to go to one thing with AI. I think I have that. So let me share my screen. I'm going to do this. So this is a report. I promised to look at multiple resources, to share multiple resources. So this is from Cognizant. they have done some kind of report which shows a lot of different case studies. I think there are 33 case studies, if I remember right. So they did this report about AI, and obviously it's their marketing. I try to be very brand agnostic. I have no association with them. But they've done a nice job, and this is a downloadable report which gives you multiple applications. So remember, you said, I bring my creativity and imagination on what can we do to bring data to the company? How can we bring growth for the company? So they've talking about different industries. So the one thing that I hope you will not do is just say, okay, AI, and we can do prediction, because that's a very basic thing, right? That's assumed because all AI does prediction. So I was very happy that nobody here at least said that. So they have this banking, AI detects fraud. We've spoken about this. Employee seat finance. This is with the virtual agent, chatbots, NLP. That's a big thing. Credit card collection. And if you see, in all of them they have specific metrics. So you start off saying, hey, this is my desired business results that I want, and there might be a due diligence process that you kind of automate. In communication, ad agency uses improves marketing campaign. Again, it's like a high level view, but they've ranked 50% efficiency on their campaigns, so they see next best click, what works, that kind of thing. Asset deduplication. I have no idea what is asset deduplication. It looks like they've taken something that's a manual process and automated in a global ad analytics firm. Okay. Chatbots, more chatbots. They're looking at point of sale data, and looking at, again, to understand sales trend or customer preference. So we can go on and on. So all of you have an idea of various applications. So I would recommend looking at this cognizance report if you want to, just, draw inspiration about different applications. Is as recent as September 2020. And what we were looking at is, it's not just you're going to use that information, you're not just going to say, hey, this is the possibilities, but I want you to be able to articulate what do you bring to the table, and help me do that, guys, so I can speak for you. Because I go talking about my students do this and that, and it bothers me when I cannot articulate the value. I don't want to give titles, because the titles are evolving. There are going to be so many different jobs. So here is another report from this company called mageplaza.com. I don't know them either. So what they have done is, they've given specific use cases in marketing. How is marketing? So remember, we were talking about creating value with existing data. So what Emmanuel was giving us a use case is sales forecasting. So you take their existing customers, and you want to generate new sales, and you want to be able to predict out of this list who is going to buy. So let me do a projection and do a forecasting of what could my sales be. And understanding customers, we spoke about that a lot. And finding general trends, you need to be able to analyze the data and detect upcoming trends in industry, from your customers or events. Ad targeting is a given, because it's very data driven, so it personalizes that. A lot of chatbots, lots of voice, voice interface. Content generation, again, you can make sure that it's the manual. They're saying the manual generation of content is very tedious. So they want to make the AI go create more content. I don't know how they create more content. I think they are going and getting content from different websites and generating more content. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Dynamic pricing is one where you want to set the price, but you're looking at what customers are paying if you have huge volume of data. So this is again at a use case level, and at not even at use case level, at a very high level, which is defining the business problem. Yes, it is, you could call it a specific use case. So when you are building an AI, if there is an actual, say the company says, okay, now we are going to build AI and it makes sense for us, let's do it. What would be your role? Like what, instead of saying I'm going to be a product manager, I'm going to be a business development manager, you're going to do some aspect of marketing for sales forecast. I want to go specific of, there is a data science sprint happening in your company, which means you're going to, you've decided you're going to bring AI, you've figured out what is the business value, you've broken it down to a specific problem you want to solve for marketing, for forecast, for sales, for customer support using chatbots, for reaching more customers. That's your new strategy. So what would you do with that? Now, does that mean that your job is done? Now the data scientist has to go build the AI. What do you do at that time? Remember, in companies, we are never allowed to sit idle because they're paying us for it. So you're supposed to be doing something that brings value from your role. So in any of these cases, let's take the example that there is an existing list and you want to understand customers, so you can go. So Emmanuel does the sales forecast and he says, okay, out of the existing list, how many customers are going to have a propensity to buy? I want to understand that. I want the AI to do that. Next step, you've already said you'll go get the data. So let's assume you're getting the data. So is getting the data your job as a business person? Yes or no? So you defined the business value, you defined specifics of how you're going to generate that business value. So usually it gets into applying your business acumen and driving the strategy of how you're going to execute. And that's what the AI is you're going to do once the AI gets you the answer, right? Or get you the subset of data that you want to operate on. So what is your role? I'm going back to that because I know many of you want to move into AI, and the easiest thing is you look around in whatever you're doing and you have data and you can get there. So Emmanuel has a list of existing customers, wants the AI to get a subset of customers so he can do a sales forecast. So after that aspirational asks, let's say you have a data scientist who's going to give it to you. What do? Is your job done related to the AI project? Or when a company is working to bring AI into the business, do you have a role? After deciding that this is what AI is going to do at a high level, is ask. You have a business ask, right? And you know that once you get the answer, you're going to use that and make a sales forecast, or you're going to use that to go run a marketing campaign. Let's stick with those two, right? What is your role? Do you have a role? And it is an iterative process, adjust and rerun. Yes, knowing what data do you need is the job of the business person. Okay, so knowing what data you need, getting that data, helping, clean up the data. A big part, 80%, that number I've seen two different stats, 75% to 80% of the time is in getting the data, cleaning the data, and figuring out how to, what is called data wrangling, to get the data to a state where it works for the AI. And depending on the size of the project, you might have a data engineer, you might have data architects, you might have a lot more people in the project coming together and saying, okay, I got this data, doesn't work for me. Now what? So you have to say, okay, now we can add this column. So Emmanuel, you had this one example where, do you want to tell us about how you were talking about adding a column for whether the person is a specific distance from a conference location? Because that data didn't exist, but you could.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this.
Do you want to tell us? Do you want to tell the class what the problem is? And
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So turn
on the video if you don't mind. You have this beautiful setup, or it's all right if you don't want to. It's okay.
No, right now I don't have the setup with me.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Tell me what the problem is.
Yeah. so this particular business problem we're trying to solve is kind of using a list of attendees of 2 conferences and figuring out how you can increase revenue by using those lists, and do we increase the price or do whatever we need to do. The list that we received has person names or persons, company, job title, location. This is it's a location in Latin America, and right now we cannot infer we can make some assumptions and say, okay, right now the goal is to offer an online version and a live version. And so the data that we have does not give us any information on the likelihood that they're going to attend. But now if we add 1 column right next to the job title, and if the job title is a CEO president, he or she may be more likely to attend in person. If the level is lower level, it's more difficult for them to get approval to travel. And another, so we can add a factor to that the job title, which is kind of a likelihood factor in which would have some weight. And similarly, if the location is in the same country, maybe it's easier to travel to that location.
Yeah.
But if it is in a different country, maybe there's going to be additional travel costs, so that we can make some assumption and say, okay, what is the distance that we do by country? Do we do by distance, mileage distance? Do we do by an in-depth search of airfares or whatever it is? But we can also apply another filter or another weight factor to the location data. And we need to make some assumptions, and now once again that could introduce some bias and some inaccuracy, because at the end of the day you may say, well, yeah, I think the CEO is going to go, but the director may not go. But it could be different, and each company may be different. But that would be one way to kind of think about the data and trying to make the most out of it.
Thank you so much. So this is a conference company. You have 2 years of past conference data. This is the existing list. This is not what you were giving as an example. This is the Capstone Lab project you're working, right? A different project, right? You're not, you have an existing list of customers who have attended past events, or it could be people who have purchased last 2 times, and you want to see whether you want to do a full sales forecast, whether they will purchase the next time. And now everybody said, get the data, clean the data, get data ready, owning the business problem, definition of automation, getting data. I see a lot of that in the comments. So what Emmanuel, and thank you for that, what Emmanuel is saying is, getting the data does not stop when you say, here's a list of customer data and give it to them, because you need certain rows and columns for the AI to learn. And if it does not have enough information, first you need to add more columns, otherwise it won't get the job done. It will give you a forecast, but it will not be accurate, right? And sometimes you might not be able to forecast anything if you want to churn data and you don't have a column which says, did the customer churn, yes or no? If you did not have that kind of information, and if you have only the final customers who have bought your product and are staying with you, that's incomplete data. So the point you're saying, Emmanuel, is adding factors. It's called feature engineering, where you add more columns from your business acumen. You can say, it makes logical sense that now when we run this conference in a certain location, whether the person is going to drive. So this is an example where conferences were run online because of COVID. Now we want to run it in person again, hopefully in 2021, very soon, maybe in the second half of the year. And you're looking at, okay, how many of these people are going to travel and come? And to do that, the logical thinking is, hey, somebody who has a higher level title will spend on the travel, assuming they've seen the value from the conference because they've already come the last 2 times. or a person who lives locally can show up. So if there's a conference here in San Jose and they're estimating how many people will show up when they sell the tickets, the business decision could be, should we run a campaign targeting local San Jose people because they're just going to show up if, as long as they appreciate the value of what the content is or the interaction, the speakers or whatever from the conference, right? Compared to if you run a global campaign and you're going to bring people from Europe, then they need to spend a lot more money. They need to be sold the value of this conference is much higher for them than this local San Jose person. And so it's a choice you're going to make on which customer segment you're going to target. And for that, the AI won't know it, that it's an important factor because you didn't tell it. It has to be in a column. So you add a factor and say, hey, this person has a highest propensity. So the interesting discussion that we had, I want to share here is if you make an assumption that the person who is local is going to come, or if so the traveling distance is less, or if they have a certain title, they're going to come. You could add a column and say that this is the title and this is this other title, and that like a CEO title and a non-CEO title to keep it easy, simple. Then if the AI is going to look at that column, it makes sense, right? If it would understand that yes, CEO, non-CEO is a factor. But if you're going to say, is the person has a propensity to buy or churn, yes or no, as a column, and your thinking is that they are in San Jose or they're outside of San Jose, AI is not going to know that. So you might want to add a column, which is a good thing, which you bring. That's where you're bringing your business knowledge into the data. But you have to say distance from conference location, 0 miles, 10 miles, 100 miles, 10,000 miles. And that is how the AI will know. And then you say, okay, then you show the correlation that this person is churning or is going to sign up. Then it understands, okay, I see this correlated to inversely to the distance. So somebody who's local has a higher propensity to buy, and it will get a whole bunch of CEOs who can travel or locals who can come. So that's how you communicate to the AI by data. That is the huge process. Whenever they say it's frustrating, we are spending so much time in data, I would say if you get involved right at the start, when you're saying this is the business value we want to create, this is what we are going to do, and you get started, if you get the data with this level of understanding, you work with the data scientists, as soon as they fit the model and it gives you a very bad accuracy, then it's not useful for you to make a sales forecast, because if you make a call, maybe it is 20% chance they'll convert. You're not going to invest on that. So you want to iterate and get more data in it. That's the problem where you get 80% of the pilots get stuck because they say we don't have the data. Not like you don't have the data, you don't have the business person involved in defining the problem statement, in defining the right metrics, in adding the right factors. So the data is not clean enough for the AI to understand. But Emmanuel also made another point. The whole idea of AI is going to find the best thing from the data. Now, by Emmanuel saying this person has is going to likely sign up, yes or no, you're adding the user's bias. So the other thing you have to look for is in the data, you might add bias. And that's another thing that's happening with all AI projects, is when they don't have the information, they're adding these columns that is increasing the bias, which is the human assumption. Because the whole idea of AI making it is it's not based on your assumption. So there's a fine line of how you would bring your business acumen into it to add these columns, but then not add your bias. You cannot have it either way. Right? You cannot have it both ways. It has to be one or the other. So that's important for you to consider and say, let's add this column. Let's see what we are getting. Let's go. Somebody said this here, it's an iterative cycle, because you have to test it out. So just because AI gives you this doesn't mean, okay, it's the end of the game and now we are just going to sit back and relax, we're making money. Now it's given you a list. Now you have to start calling the list, or you have to send a campaign to the list. So that's why you do pilots, because then you get the list and then you call them, you do the action that you want to do, test it out, come back and feed data. So it's like talking to Alexa and saying something, and then Alexa doesn't understand what I'm saying and starts singing a song. That's data that goes back to the cloud to improve the algorithm. So that's how you need to do it even in a business case. So before we go, we have a minute, but I'm excited about this no code AI. So I wanted to show you one of them. So this is a company called Accio. Again, I try to be very brand agnostic and not get too crazy to about one brand or other. There's a lot of auto ML, that's what it's called, no code AI out there. But I found this one. It's a new company, but I like them. They are very smart and ready to work with us. So the way you do that is you start with create a flow and you enter customer data. I already have a bunch of data here. So here is an example of a table with a lot of details in here. Is test customer ID, a bunch of demographics of the customer. They have phone lines, they have multiple lines, they have internet service. This is all the information they have. Has the person contacted tech service, yes or no? They have, and then they could be on a month by month contract or a year, 1 year contract. So these are, we don't know whether these are all factors. So then you could do that and you can say, this is the data. So you create a flow, input the data, and then you can say, I want to run a prediction. It's literally as simple as that. So I input the data, I save it. Then I say, I want to run a prediction. You can get the data directly or you can get it from Salesforce. So I add one more step and I say, I want to run a prediction, predict. So, okay, the next step, it says predict. So I run a prediction and now it's giving me all the different columns and I can say which number or do you want to predict against, right? So this is where the AI is not really smart. It wants you to tell me. So I'm going to say, I want to understand churn. I want to, and then I've actually run the model. So it's actually showing me. Otherwise, it will quickly go run the model for me. And then it says, here are some sample predictions. Is the customer going to churn, yes or no? So the way they do that is they take 20% of the data, keep it aside, create a model with the 80%, and then they test it. So this is the test they're doing with the 20%. So this testing to keep aside what would be the 20% data, based on that you're going to test, is another business problem, business users role. Because you want to test for different situations to see, hey, is the CEO candidate coming? Is the local candidate coming? Are we getting, people who have come first time users? Are they coming? Are they like, people who have come multiple times? You might want to test for different scenarios. So you might want to make sure that your sample data that you're going to test data is the right one. So I would recommend, playing with this and just put a data set and try it out. And sometimes it will give you like a prediction and doesn't know what, you don't know what it means, right? So you might want to figure out what you're trying to do. This is a very classic wine quality data set that you find in public, that you can look at it and then you can play with it. And that's a very common example that you get in machine learning classes, saying, hey, let's find out wine quality. And then they'll give you this and then say, okay, now let's run a prediction. And then that would be and so I want to see when you say wine quality, what am I doing? I'm checking whether it's a different kind of acidity. And then based on that, they're doing the model. I'm dead against example like this. Please do not go do this wine quality kind of things if you're a business person, because most of the machine learning or any of the data science classes out there will give you this kind of useless data, which is nothing related to your customer data, but it is canned and ready and say, here's, let's understand wine quality, and here acidity jumps up, let's model on acidity, voila, we got our answer. And that's great for somebody who's building a model, who wants to understand, to do the technology piece behind it. They've learned something. You learn nothing as a business person, because the data is already canned. You look at it and it runs a model. Yes, it's running a model. Okay, so what? You learned nothing. So looking at a business problem, translating it to a problem statement is the way to go. Going through this thing of what data you have, where the gaps are, and arriving at that before you get to actually asking the model to do anything. And then you can go input into Accio and see what it does. And I would recommend trying that out. And with that, I'm going to wrap up, and I just want to show you one more thing. So one of the things I have is, I have my newsletter I did mention, but I also have a communication with my students. This might not be, completely something that you can access because it's not available for everybody, but I make it a point to actually share, document what I'm doing as my communication with my students. So if I'm telling them, hey, AI has this confusion matrix and you want to understand what is accuracy and recall, I teach them, I have that information like a blog. So you can sign up to this like a newsletter if you want. But there is a very beautiful lesson here about problem statement. How do you arrive at problem statement? And there are 4 pieces of problem statement. So I would recommend, it's going to my admin view of it. So it's capstonelab.substack.com, guys. Okay, 1 second. This is the previous one I showed you. Okay, so how do you arrive at a problem statement? What we discussed today is how to take a business problem and arrive at a problem statement. I have steps of how to do it. So go take a look. And I have something called a 4P framework. So you can go try that if you want. And before I close out, Aishatu is reminding me one other thing that you have a responsibility as a business person is in the ethics on what you're doing, what you're trying to do. Are you snooping around people's information? Are you labeling the data in a biased way? Do you have enough data? The data itself could be biased. There could be data bias, or like the example Emmanuel gave, there could be bias baked into the data because of made assumptions from the people involved. Or you might have GDPR compliance issue and you're using the data that you should not be using, and there could be ethical boundaries you're crossing. So all those also become your job. So I hope this was helpful for you to get a sense of defining your role as a business person in a more granular sense, so that now you can actually go and figure out how are you going to make the translation. So one of the things I am working on, and I would like your input, is I speak to many of my students who want to pivot careers and move into new job roles. And one of the things I'm trying to do this, instead of just talking about it, I'm trying to make it a little bit more systematic. So I've created a Trello board on how you would pivot your career, to create a framework of what I have helped my students in the past, what worked. And so you think of what is your function or industry, how do you see yourself, what are the skills, and just think about yourself to do that. If anybody wants to talk about it offline, I'm happy to help you with that. From what we have done today, to say you're going to bring the business, define the business, be the representative of the customer, to breaking it down to the problem statement, thinking of very different strategies of achieving that business goal, defining the metrics for it, ethics of it, looking at the data, adding factors to the data. All of those things are language you need to know, instead of saying, I'm the business person, I'm a product manager, give me an AI job. Because you are needed to make this AI happen. Otherwise, 85% of the AI is failing because you are not in the game. So with that, I'm going to wrap up, and I will see you guys next week. And we have an amazing speaker and already scheduled, and Sneha will tell us who it is. And be sure to sign up to my newsletter or give me feedback what you want to do. So it's Curious Futurist. I'm going to put it here. Curious Futurist .substack.
Sudha, one question.
Yes.
If we receive today the newsletter, do we need to register again?
Yes. So yeah, I think the Substack one you have to subscribe again, because I've just taken a previous mailing list. I know you all gave permission and on MailChimp, and I was sending you the list, but I moved to Substack. So thank you for that, Jose. I will remind people that they need to register again. I mean, you just have to subscribe, but by which you're giving permission, and only then it will continue to send it. So yes, thank you for that. And then the same capstone lab.substack, I've had it only for my students, but if anybody is curious, go take a look. You don't need to subscribe to it because this is more for my students, but if this topic is of interest, you might learn something there. So I'm trying to use Substack to kind of streamline my thinking here so I can share content more. And I need feedback on how often you want to see the newsletter, or you want to see specific content and things like that. So I'll kind of bring a rhythm back so we can do more of this. Okay, with that, I'm going to wrap up. And this recording will go on Career Pivot. So you need to be registered to Career Pivot, and only then you can have access. And it's free, and don't plan to charge for Career Pivot ever. So with that, I'm going to close out. Have a beautiful rest of the week and a weekend, and I will see you all next week. And ping me on Career Pivot what I showed you about the whole how I'm thinking of this whole how do you career pivot, and how do you think about a framework of discovery of what skills you bring and moving that. If that's something you're working on, talk to me. I'm here to help. And with that, let's close out. I hope I didn't miss anybody here in the comment. So be sure to connect with each other, because I think there's amazing brain power in this room. So with that, let's close out. Thank you, everybody. Bye. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.